this is one of the reasons why they're using up more oxygen than they normally would.
By the orange, there is light gray material on either side.
I'm going to put that.
Doesn't make any difference whether you swept out the white room or whether you passed coffee in MCC or whether you kept the sharks away during recovery. Everybody on this flight was a big man. There are no little guys, and if I can borrow just a quick phrase or a quick word that I read yesterday that our president used in terms of words of Sir Isaac Newton, we stood on the shoulders of giants.
Scientists won't open the boxes of moon rock.
In the Chilean coastal town of Viña del Mar, Metalsmith Angel Nieto rescues bees that typically build their hives in populated areas of the city and its suburbs. Nieto told Reuters he started rescuing the hives after receiving a call from the firefighters last year.
We basically protect the bees, take care of them, take care of the environment. It's basically that.
During the rescues, the volunteer beekeeper does not use traditional gear like gloves or a hat with a protecting net. Instead, he grabs the hives with his bare hands and puts the bees into wooden beehives. Then he takes the bees to a space built just for them.
Here they are calm, free you could say. They are not aggressively treated or harmed. They are respected.
Scientists say the bee population in Chile is endangered by pesticides and global warming. Across the Americas, extreme weather has devastated colonies, threatening harvests and pushing up the costs of food.
Call of Duty could soon land on Nintendo consoles for the first time. That's according to a tweet from Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer on Wednesday. He said Microsoft had entered into a 10-year commitment with the Japanese game maker. Call of Duty, a popular first-person shooter series, is made by Activision Blizzard. It's the subject of a $69 billion takeover by Microsoft. Though that deal has raised concerns among watchdogs, it could hurt competition. Microsoft rivals Sony, which makes the PlayStation console, has criticised the agreement and called for a regulatory veto. Microsoft had offered to keep the Call of Duty series on the PlayStation for 3 years after the current agreement. Sony's gaming chief Jim Ryan called that proposal inadequate. Microsoft President Brad Smith wrote in the Wall Street Journal this week his company had made another offer to Sony. It was a 10-year contract to make each new Call of Duty release available on PlayStation the same day it came to Xbox. One gaming consultant told Reuters the new deal with Nintendo could put pressure on Sony to reach a deal. Officials at the Japanese firm were not immediately available for comment.
Luego se dará lectura al proyecto de resolución.
Peru's Congress voted to oust President Pedro Castillo in an impeachment trial on Wednesday, just hours after he plunged the country into a constitutional crisis by attempting to dissolve the legislature by decree. That morning, he announced he would temporarily shut down Congress and call for new elections, sparking allegations of a coup.
Por lo que, in response to citizens' demands throughout the length and breadth of the country, we have decided to establish an exceptional government aimed at re-establishing the rule of law and democracy.
Ignoring Castillo's attempt, lawmakers moved ahead with the previously planned impeachment trial, with 101 votes in favor of removing him, 6 against, and 10 abstentions. The result was announced with loud cheers, and the legislature called for Vice President Dina Boluarte to take office, who was later sworn in as interim president. The ex-president has since been detained by police and accused of the crime of rebellion for breaking the constitutional order according to Peru's public ministry. The prosecutor's office in October filed a constitutional complaint against Castillo, for allegedly leading a criminal organization. Castillo has called the allegation slander. The leftist teacher-turned-president had survived 2 previous attempts to impeach him since he began his term just over a year ago. But after his announcement that he would dissolve Congress, allies abandoned him and his ministers resigned. After Peruvian lawmakers voted to oust Castillo, demonstrators in the streets of Lima chanted, "We did it, we did it," with one protester telling Reuters that as long as there's a brave and combative youth, the Peruvians will have a government elected by the people.
U.S. stocks ended broadly lower on Wednesday after a choppy session where investors struggled to find a clear direction following downbeat comments from the country's top bank executives who said a mild to hard recession was likely ahead. The Dow finished flat, the S&P 500 fell fractionally but for the 5th straight session, while the Nasdaq lost 0.5%, closing down for the 4th session in a row. Fears over how long the Federal Reserve might stick to rate hikes ahead of its policy meeting next week are likely to continue to weigh on the stock market, said George Ball, chairman of Sanders Morris Harris.
The barometer of up or down is the expectation of Fed rate hikes, how soon, how much, for how long. And right now, I think everyone accepts the notion 50 basis points in a few days, probably 50 basis points sometime after that, and following those 2 moves by the Fed, nobody has the slightest idea. Will there be no recession, slight recession? I think slight recession is the consensus, but that's all baked into the market. And so really for the last 2 weeks, with a couple of dramatic up days and down days as the exceptions, the market is leaderless, rudderless, and aimless.
Shares of energy companies fell, weighed down by another slump in oil prices, which settled at their lowest level in 2022, as concerns over the outlook for global growth wiped out all of this year's gains. Shares of Apple fell after Morgan Stanley cut its estimates for iPhone shipments for the holiday quarter. Shares of Tesla lost more than 3% amid concerns of disruptions at its factory in Shanghai, where fewer cars than expected could roll off production lines this month. And finally, shares of Carvana lost nearly half their value after Wedbush Securities downgraded the used car retailer's stock to underperform from neutral and slashed its price target to $1.